Hi, we are going to try something new for our board preview meeting for the May meeting, and that is have you have some information ahead of time so that as members that you can come into the board meeting in a very prepared fashion and we can make some decisions. First of all, I want to thank Kelly Gay, who was my partner in crime in creating the work that we're going to present here. I wanted to give it to you in video ahead of time so that we can use our board meeting time for discussion and decision and not just trying to understand what was presented. So as we have all known, we are wanting to take IWL to the next level as a nonprofit, and we have lots and lots of ideas of how to do that. So what Kelly and I have put together is the optimal way we would propose that the board begin to function so that we can achieve our goals as an organization. So I'm going to begin with this first page, which is focusing on 3 items: board operations, metrics, and then what are we actually going to deliver in 2018. I'm going to walk you through each of those separately and provide you some background. First and foremost, board operations. We've had many discussions about how the board can more effectively operate. Well, Kelly and I have a proposal for you that we think would allow us to take the board to the next level, and that is focusing on a couple different things. One, the composition and structure. As you know, we have open board seats that we need to make sure we have filled as soon as we can, and then we have some desires to optimize the membership of the board. So in board operations, we want to focus on that. We then need to really be very clear on roles and responsibilities of the board and the rest of the organization. We have those, again, as I mentioned, those key roles of treasurer and vice chair that we need to fill. And we really want to focus on operational excellence. And we need to make sure that we are meeting our financial plan as always. I'm going to go through that in a little more detail in the next slide, but as a highlight here of the 3 different areas, that's like the quick overview of board operations. Metrics is the next thing. As a board, we haven't spent enough time understanding what are the metrics that we want to follow that will allow us to deliver what we want to deliver. So we have a whole idea on how we can do that in terms of metrics. Again, I'll go through that in a minute. And then the last section is on the deliverables themselves. These are the areas that we as a board have talked about most frequently. I've outlined them in different colors so that you can see that we really have 4 focused areas. One is on the conference, and that's in red. We have a couple on sponsorship and financial stability. Those are in blue. In green, we have the continuation of the visioning work that evolves into the marketing and branding for the organization. And then lastly, in black are all the ways that we can expand our services as a nonprofit. So I will go through each of those separately in a few slides. But as you see, for us to take what we need to do to take the organization to the next level, we really need to focus on all 3: the operations, the metrics, and our specific deliverables for the organization. So let me go into board operations. Very clear objective. We need to have a board that is sustainable and productive, and it ensures the delivery of our plan. So that's the focus of the objective of the project under board operations. It includes the composition, it includes filling key roles, and it includes this operational excellence that I keep referencing. I'm going to show you more on the next slide. We have to have our established financial plan, which we do. We need to make sure we're meeting that plan. And then we need to make sure we've got some rigor in our governance processes, like the handbook, and having a more centralized repository for the documents that we need to share as a board so that we can all reference them at any time and not have to rely on our email. Organizational structure. So if I show you this particular slide, you'll see we have the board of directors with the committee structure that we have today, which I still think is the right direction for the board. So we will have a marketing committee, we will have a donor sponsor committee, Strategic Events and Programming Committee, Finance and Governance, as we do today. I've added a new role that Kelly and I were talking about that we think will be beneficial to the organization, and that is this Director of Operations. So what's happening today is that we're all trying to pinch in for each other, and we rely heavily on the IWLF staff to provide us everything that we need to know what's going on each of the different aspects of the foundation. If we had a role that specifically focused on that, on operations and being able to provide the board the information that it needs, the board could move to the next level and make sure we're delivering what our vision is and where we want to be, and maybe not so much in the details. That role, as is the board roles, would still be a volunteer role. So we will have to find someone who would be interested in being in that Director of Operations role. I keep talking about this organizational delivery model, and this is something that I am very excited about. What I see that we have struggled with as a board is relying on the board members themselves to be executing each of the projects. For the amount of work that the IWL has that in front of it that it wants to do, that's just not, it's not tenable. It's not something that we are necessarily the best people to execute, nor do we have the capacity and the bandwidth to do it. So what I am proposing is that we have projects underneath each of the committees that will align with the deliverables that we have set out for the organization. And we will have project leaders who will then be very task focused on a project. So as people come forward and say, I'm really interested in engaging in IWL, how do we do that? We have projects, we have teams they can work on. They can be a project leader. It can be a very focused short-term effort, and not necessarily the only position we can offer them is either on the conference committee or on the board. So this would be a win-win. We get some great talent into the organization. People are interested in volunteering. At the Louisville conference last week, I had many people come up to me and say, how do I get engaged? What can I do? And this model was in the forefront of my mind, thinking if I had roughly job descriptions for each of these projects or project charters and saying, here's a role, would you be interested? Where is your passion? I think we can move the organization forward. So the structure itself, I know you're not going to be able to easily read it. It's quite a complex org chart. Basically is we have a project lead and we have members on each of the projects, and the projects themselves fall under the purview of each of the committees. And you as board members may have a particular passion about one of the areas. We have a great role for you there too, and that is you could be an advisor to that project. You could be the project leader if you have the time and the willingness to do it. You could be on the project. But there's lots of ways you as a board member can engage. But this, I think, will allow us to make some progress and get more done than we've been able to get done thus far. The role of the Director of Operations really is in ensuring that the individual projects are meeting their goals and providing the board with the information on the projects themselves. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes in the metrics slides how we will do that. So let's go there. Let's talk about metrics. So what we want to do is evolve the board from idea generation into focusing on outcomes and results. We need to make sure that we're delivering what we want to deliver and not just creating new ideas. So we've locked those ideas. We have brilliant ideas that we've each come up with. Now we want to say, are we making progress in meeting those objectives? How do we do that? In an organization like Lilly or One America, we get metrics reports so we know where we're at. We're proposing that same thing for IWL. So in metrics, that project specifically is what are those key metrics that we want? What is the dashboard that we will have for the board? So you don't have to be in the details of every project. You can see at a glance how each project is doing. Here's a couple examples for you to think about. Again, this is rough draft of Kelly and Nancy putting together some ideas. So these are what we would say, this is what a dashboard would look like for the board, so you could actually see where we are with what our goals are. You have plans, you have monthly targets, you have yearly targets, you understand exactly what the performance on that metric was at each time period, and you can see whether or not it's up or down to plan. So something like this doesn't have to be exact, but would be what we are proposing the board have at its hand in each meeting. The next one is a project report. So we have some structure around each of the projects. What are they going to deliver? This is an example that we could take and cater to our needs to say each project is making progress. And there's that level of accountability that says work is getting done that I know as a board member is really key for me, as I am sure it is key for you too. So you take metrics, you take operational excellence. The next set of slides really are on the deliverables. These deliverables are what we've talked about as a board. They take into account the feedback that you gave me after the last meeting about what do you think the top deliverables should be for us in 2018. What I will tell you here is each of these slides are not set in stone. The focus is what we think the focus is based on the feedback that we receive from each of you. But we really have the opportunity to say this is the framework we'll use for the project and the project lead to say what exactly will they deliver. But I wanted to at least have something on paper for you to react to say what are those words. So the first one is deliver and optimize the conference. You know, we live and breathe and have had our success as IWL in the conference that we have here in Indianapolis and that same one that we put on in Louisville. We need to make sure we deliver and optimize. That remains a key project for us. So we've put some ideas here around what the objective of this project is, what the metrics are, how do they align with our dashboard. And you can go through that at your leisure. The second is really around financial stability and donorship and sponsorship. So we've taken that and chunked it into two pieces. One is that we need a case for support that we can use to attract donors and attract sponsors. And that's really what this will focus on. So again, short-term project, get it done, move it off. It gives us capacity for future projects, or this work rolls into the next one, which is then we have an identification of an event sponsor donor experience so that we can continue the momentum that comes out of each of the conferences and use that to our advantage to attract our sponsors for the following year or donors for the program as a whole, so we could do more than just deliver conferences. These items that I put in green are all around marketing and visioning and branding. So let's take the vision package that we've done and take it to the next level, making sure we have the marketing material that aligns with that visioning work that we've already done. That's another project that we would say we need to get done in 2018, tied closely to it. But again, I'm trying to make things into smaller workable projects so we make progress. And that's brand redesign and testing. So we would have a deliverable in 2018 around redesigning the brand and testing of that brand. Then we move into what's next for IWL. And that is beyond the conferences. We've said we really want to be in the consulting business for especially mid-sized, smaller-sized companies. We need to decide what that is. So we'd have a project specifically around what is our consulting practice and what is our long-range roadmap. So I hope you're getting the feel of this, that it's small chunks of work, leaders identified, team members to work on it, and we can see some progress in 2018. 7, a bit of a stretch goal, is say we want to have 2 educational workshops to be built out and used with partners and part of the conference or not part of the conference. Take what we have already had success with unconscious bias, and then add another one. So a bit of a stretch goal, but that would be also a scope of work that we need to figure out what exactly we want to flush out and do in 2018. The deliverable number 8 is the identification of 1 or 2 mid-year programming revenue options. So what else do we have to offer that will be brought in as revenue for IWL? That's what this particular deliverable is focused on. 9 I think it's a unique one. I think it stands out for IWL that is not something that's offered elsewhere, and that is to pilot a community conversation with businesses and executive leaders. If you remember, the idea from this came from the focus group work we did on our visioning, and we received a lot of feedback from leaders within the Indianapolis community that they didn't have a place to go to talk about the issue of gender equality and promoting women in their organizations. They wanted the opportunity to speak with other leaders and hear from their peers. So this is what number 9 is. It's what we're calling a community conversation on the topic. So there you go, a lot of work. We've talked about all of them a couple different times in some form. What we've done here for you is put some words on paper, put a little bit of scope around it, know that they'll be refined as we execute them and find the right leader and find the right people to engage. So what am I asking of you? So I gave you a lot of information. You have the slides to read at your leisure. But for the May meeting that we are having as a board, what I want to do is not spend time going through these slides, but simply seeking clarifying questions. And know that you can send these to Kelly or to me ahead of time. You can bring them into the board. But the idea is we want to see if the board is aligned. So we want a decision from you at our May meeting and say, do you agree that what we are proposing here as a high-level business plan, focus areas, are directionally correct? So not is every word scoped out exactly, but directionally, are we going in the right direction and are you supportive? And then the second question we're asking is, do you agree on the delivery model, which is that we have a director of operations, that we have these finite projects, we have leaders of those projects, and that we can focus as a board on, are we delivering our vision? So do you agree with that will be the next question. And lastly, and most importantly, do you have an interest in particular areas? Do you want to be an advisor? Would you have an interest in a project leader? Where is your passion in all of these deliverables? That'll be our final question for you at the May meeting. So with that, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you watching the video, and I look forward to the discussion in early May. Thank you.